Hey you guys, how's it going? So today is our second practicum class, and you guys are doing such a great job already. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the part in our workbook for what you should start thinking about and filling out in your Google Doc. And then we're going to look at the story Bible for Stranger Things, and I'll read through it and we'll look at it. And this should give you an idea of what your exam project should look like. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so here is your syllabus and workbook. And basically, all you have to do for class today is show up. And I'll keep my video lectures to under 30 minutes, cross fingers. And then you guys should have a Facebook call together as a group after the lecture and talk about these things, and then go over to your Google Doc and start, or I should say, continue writing over there. Okay? So here is our syllabus and workbook, and what some of the things that I would like for you guys to start considering, and I know you already have actually, would be your marketable genre. So, is this going to be, action, adventure? Can I spell it? Is it going to be a romance? Is it a young adult Indiana Jones? So you can start deciding, nailing it down so that we know what marketable genre it is. So what do I mean when like, I'm not saying genre, am I? I'm actually saying marketable genre. And what I mean by that is, what's the genre that you can tell your potential agent or producer, so that they know exactly how they would sell your concept. So, for example, you can't say, well, it's partially action adventure, but it's also like a deep dark gothic, but mainly romance. So, your agent would be like, what? Like, how am I going to market this? So, I want you to choose a marketable genre that you could tell your agent, so that your agent could take it and sell it or shop it around and say, okay, this is a young adult action adventure, 3-episode miniseries, something very concrete that they can use to pitch and sell your idea. All right. I will get to that in a second. Okay, great. You want to talk about, is it a serial show? And if so, is it episodic or is it standalone? Also, is it an anthology? So, an anthology like American Horror Story, for example, it's using all of the same, or a lot of similar characters, but the story is completely different from season to season. And yet, the themes and the tone remain the same, don't they? Okay, so you want to take that into consideration and write that down. And then I would like for you guys to start thinking about how many seasons this particular TV series could be. I know you already have your idea for season 1, and we know how season 1 is going to end and how that will lead into season 2. Have you guys thought beyond that? If someone were going to give you guys a contract and say, okay, we want you to write, 3, 4 more seasons for money, do you have an idea of what you would want to do? Let's write that down here so that we have, a really broad overview of how you can take this creative concept and expand it for multiple seasons. Here's where you're going to write similar shows. So I know that you guys have said Stranger Things, The Goonies, for example. So I would like to know at least, no, not at least, not above or beyond or below. I would like to know exactly the 3 shows that you think this idea encapsulates. So 3. We need one more here. And then here, I want you to start writing, like, who is your protagonist, who is your antagonist, and actually, you guys have protagonists, don't you? So we know, for example, what are the protagonists' names? And then we know we have time as the antagonist. And then we have secondary characters, and so I would like for you to write their names out here as well. Okay, then these last 3 sections are just about describe the plot for season 1, summarize it, and then answer these questions. Do the protagonists succeed? And what do the protagonists encounter along the way? So now what I want you guys to start thinking about are the individual hopes and dreams and goals of each of your protagonists and your antagonist. I would also like for you to think even more deeply about including, goals for your secondary characters, so that when you start writing, you know exactly what each character wants. And then as you're writing, you know how to put things in their way to prevent them from getting what they want and helping them, ultimately achieve their goals, and maybe not just achieve them, but go beyond that. A really, really good example is the film Back to the Future. Should we make it a homework assignment? Don't you love our school? We have the best homework. Okay. But if you have time to watch Back to the Future, every single word and image and piece of dialogue, everything, every little thing and every big thing is planting something that will pay off in the future. Nothing is wasted. No words, no description, no objects, no science, nothing at all in the script is wasted. Everything is going to be used. So I want you guys to think about, your 3-episode miniseries. You have, I know it actually seems like a lot of writing, but 3 episodes is not a lot of space. So you need to be really economical in the information that you put into the script. Every bit counts. So just even if you want to watch the first 10 or 15 minutes of Back to the Future, you'll notice that even the first 10, 15 minutes, there's nothing put into that film that isn't direct information and going to correlate to something that's going to happen later in the film. It's beautiful. It's so succinct. So I want you guys to start thinking about that as well. Okay, next, here we are. So this is the story Bible for Stranger Things. And you'll notice that it doesn't actually say Stranger Things, does it? It says Montauk. Okay, so let me just see if I can make this a little bit easier for you to read. Okay, it says, Montauk, an epic tale of sci-fi horror. Sci-fi horror. Marketable genre. Okay, all right. Introduction. Montauk is an 8-hour sci-fi horror epic. Set in Long Island in 1980 and inspired by the supernatural classics of that era, we explore the crossroads where the ordinary meets the extraordinary. The feeling of fear and wonder as Elliot approaches a fog-drenched shed in E.T., the helpless dread that consumes Chief Brody as he watches a boy and his raft dragged under the water by an unseen monster in Jaws, the crackling television in Poltergeist, the horror of a cackling clown in It, the friendship and adventure of Stand By Me. Emotional, cinematic, and rooted in character, Montauk is a love letter to the golden age of Steven Spielberg and Stephen King, a marriage of human drama and supernatural fear. So what is this? What is this information that they're giving? It's really interesting, isn't it? Because they're giving you the sense by writing this short premise of what Stranger Things will become. They're giving you all the information you need here. They're giving you exactly the length. They're giving you the genre. They're giving you a premise and log line, and then they're expanding on that by telling you, here's what it's similar to. So we're getting similarities to E.T., we're getting similarities to Jaws, Poltergeist, It, and Stand By Me. If you haven't seen these films and yet you are choosing to sort of hearken back to Stranger Things as your example of what you want your episode to, or what you want your series to be similar to, you should actually take a moment and go watch these films. I would say especially Stand By Me, because you have multiple protagonists and points of view. So take a look at Stand By Me and see how that story was developed to, give each character their own personality and their own goals. And yet, they have a similar plot. They're all going on this adventure together. But you guys want your you guys want your season to be very similar to Stranger Things. And Stranger Things is very similar to these films. So I would recommend that you take a little bit of time and watch them. And then it's actually saying, this is going to be emotional, cinematic, and it's rooted in character. And I believe you guys had a conversation about that yesterday, about rooting your story in character as well. A marriage of human drama and supernatural fear. So you're going to write an introduction to your story Bible that will explain what you want to do. So here we have a picture from E.T. The next section here is called the Montauk Project Conspiracy. Everyone loves a good conspiracy. We've seen the most well-known Area 51 and the Philadelphia experiment sensationalized on film and television many times before. But the Montauk Project, one of the most bizarre conspiracies in our country's history, remains untapped. So this is super cool, isn't it? Because they're actually taking, an example from American history and saying, we want to take this idea and expand upon it. I find that to be super interesting. In 1942, as World War II raged across the ocean, the Air Force established Camp Hero on the easternmost point of Long Island, Montauk. Blighting the quaint, picturesque resort town that would serve as Peter Benchley's inspiration for Amity in Jaws, the base's initial objective was to protect America against possible German invasion. The already enormous base was later expanded during the Cold War. A long-range radar dish was added, and it became a focal point of Soviet surveillance. Around this time, the base allegedly began to conduct a series of top-secret experiments, codename the Montauk Project. So it's interesting how titles change. And so even though you guys might come up with a title that you think is perfect for your series, it may get changed in production, and that's okay. The Montauk Project changed to Stranger Things, and I don't know if anybody really has a problem with that. I haven't heard anyone say that they didn't like the title. The Montauk Project involved the most cutting-edge developments in science, No one knows for sure what these experiments entailed, but the chatter runs a gamut of the weird and wonderful: alien contact, time travel, telepathy, alternate dimensions, mutant monsters, you name it, someone claims it happened at this base. So here are some, real images from Camp Hero Air Force Base on Montauk, Long Island, around 1980. The next section here is story. We begin at Camp Hero in the fall of 1980, a few months before the base will be shut down by the US government. A mysterious experiment has gone horribly awry, and something has gotten out. On this very night, a young boy, Will Byers, vanishes into thin air. His disappearance has a potent effect on the small town community, particularly on his best friend, Mike Wheeler, his brother Jonathan, his mother Joyce, and the reluctant chief of police, Jim Hopper. We will follow each of these characters as they grapple with and investigate Will's disappearance. As they peel back the layers of this mystery, they will all arrive at the same shocking conclusion. Will was abducted by supernatural entities which were inadvertently released during an experiment. These entities exist between dimensions and have begun to feed on life from our world. Will's disappearance is only the beginning. Over the course of the series, the tear or rip that separates their world from ours will begin to spread across Montauk like a supernatural cancer. This cancer will manifest itself in increasingly bizarre paranormal ways. Electrical fields will be disrupted, strange fungi will grow on structures and people. A heavy fog will drift in from the Atlantic. The temperature will plummet, food will rot, gravity will fluctuate. People will glimpse bizarre entities in their homes and businesses. There will be an escalating number of vanishings. The entire town would become haunted and in grave danger. If people can disappear, can an entire town? In order to save Will and the town, our heroes will have to outsmart federal agents and tap into the preternatural abilities of a mysterious child telepath named 11, who has recently escaped from Camp Hero. 11 will ultimately give them access to this in-between dimension, a nightmarish reflection of our own, where they will find themselves face to face with unimaginable horrors, horrors from which some of them will never escape. Those who do will be forever changed. Here's a picture from Close Encounters, Steven Spielberg. The next section is structure. Montauk will be structured, let me get that, there we go, like a film. There will be a definitive beginning, middle, and end. There will be no loose ends after the finale, and all of our lead characters will have complete arcs. The limited nature of the project will allow us to target film actors for the adult leads. For example, Ewan McGregor or Sam Rockwell for Hopper, Naomi Watts or Marissa Tomei for Joyce. Act 1, episodes 1 through 3, will depict the vanishing of Will Byers and the resulting fallout in the community. Chief Hopper will investigate the disappearance only to find his case obstructed at every turn by shadowy federal agents. Mike will meet and bond with 11. Jonathan will become fixated on a supernatural terror inside his shed. Joyce will make paranormal contact with Will. By the end of the act, our disparate characters will all arrive at the same conclusion. Will was abducted by supernatural forces and taken into a realm which exists beyond human senses. Act 2, episodes 4 through 6, will have the town of Montauk becoming increasingly haunted, raising the stakes as our characters desperately attempt to uncover the mystery. Several peripheral characters will come to the forefront, including Terry Ives, a local conspiracy theorist, and Mr. Clark, a middle school science teacher. We will also delve deeper into Eleven's terrifying backstory, and Mike will travel into this alternate dimension for the first time. He will return with proof that Will is alive, but if he wants to save him, he will need help. This act will end with our disparate characters and storylines coming together. Act 3, episodes 7 and 8, will climax with characters working together to outsmart the military, venture into this alternate dimension, save Will, and hopefully close this tear once and for all. Here's a picture from Altered States, directed by Ken Russell. Here we have a section on tone and style. The visual style will be energetic, creative, and cinematic. The framing will be bold. The cinematography will be dark and constantly on the move. The pacing will be fast. Since Montauk is set in the fall of 1980, the show will feature many period details: wood-paneled station wagons, analog technology, Empire Strikes Back in the theaters, Blondie on the radio, etc. While this will add a fun nostalgia factor to the show, these details must never overwhelm the story or characters. Spielberg's early films have a certain timeless quality to them, and we will strive for the same. The soundtrack should similarly feel period but timeless. Classic songs will only come from sources such as radios and TVs. Most of the music will be original, which we imagine as a cinematic, eerie, modern synth sound inspired by classic early John Carpenter scores like The Thing and The Fog. Here's a picture from Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper from 1982. The next section is called Horror. The horror in Montauk is supernatural but rooted in science. Dark matter, black holes, wormholes, alternative universes, string theory. We want to use the mathematics of theoretical physics to ground our horror in reality. Our supernatural entities will remain mostly obscured throughout, hidden in the shadows, tucked away just off screen. When we do glimpse them, they will be terrifying, unforgettable, strange, their design taking inspiration from the masters of the grotesque: Clive Barker, Guillermo del Toro, H.R. Geiger, and Masahiro Ito, Silent Hill. To believably realize our entities on screen, we plan to employ a combination of prosthetics, trained movement artists, subtle CGI, and some good old-fashioned fog and shadow. The show will also prominently feature yet another type of horror, the humankind. This supernatural terrors unleashed on our town will in certain ways personify the evil that exists between the perfect facade of this small town. Abuse, divorce, violence, cruelty, substance abuse, depression, death. Our characters will struggle with the darkness of the human condition. How do you cope with the abundance of evil in this world? And in the end, is it worth it? This is an image from Hellraiser, directed by Clive Barker in 1987. The kids. Mike Wheeler is 12. He is a cute kid, but a birthmark on his left cheek leads to much bullying and near crippling insecurity. He has never had a first kiss, much less a girlfriend. He escapes his insecurities through reading fantasy novels, spending time with his three best friends, Lucas, Dustin, and Will, and retreating into his own vivid imagination. The dungeon master of his Dungeons and Dragons group, he writes sprawling adventures with fantastical monsters. When he finds himself on a real adventure facing real monsters, he will discover a courage he didn't know he had. By the end, he will even kiss a girl. Lucas Conley, 12, is Mike's best friend. He lives only a few houses away. He is scrawny, short, loudmouthed. Initially a source of comic relief, his character will darken and deepen over the course of the series. His wealthy parents are in the midst of a costly divorce. Vitriolic arguments are a daily occurrence. As a result, he will grow angry and destructive. His attitude will land his friends in danger more than once and put his friendship with Mike to the test. Will Byers, 12, is a sweet, sensitive kid with sexual identity issues. He only recently came to the realization that he does not fit into the 1980s definition of normal. His innocent choices, such as his colorful clothes, prove a constant source of bullying. Like Mike, Will escapes through fantasy gaming, where he can be himself uninhibited. He has a close relationship with his mother, Joyce. His brother Jonathan helps raise him in lieu of their father, who abandoned them 4 years ago. Dustin Henderson, 12, is the king geek. He is overweight and wears oversized glasses. His supportive parents are nerds themselves and are supportive of his choices and hobbies. However, Dustin finds less acceptance at school, where he's often bullied for his weight and interests. He frequently bickers with Lucas. Their arguments are good-natured at first, but escalate as the stakes rise. Here's an image from Stand By Me, directed by Rob Reiner in 1986. The Outsider. 11 was an orphan with telekinesis. Her preternatural abilities have been linked to genetic mutations caused by her mother's drug use. When she was just 2 years old, she was taken for experiments by a clandestine faction of the U.S. military. She has subsequently lived out the majority of her life in a small cell beneath Camp Hero. During this time, she and a group of other children, 1 to 10, were subjected to a series of painful, dangerous experiments. Her powers proved greater than the other children, and she began to receive special attention from Agent 1. Outside of Agent 1, she has little experience interacting with others and has no memory of the outside world. When she escapes the laboratory at the start of our series, she finds herself experiencing real life for the first time. This proves both terrifying and thrilling. If Mike is the Elliot of our show, 11 is our E.T. Here's an image from Firestarter from 1984. The Teenagers. Jonathan Byers, 16, is mysterious, quiet, with artistic leanings and a lifelong love and talent for photography. He finds his social life constantly stifled by his responsibilities to his family. He works at the local movie theater to help his mother pay rent. The rest of his time is spent taking care of his kid brother, Will. While he loves his family very much, he also feels burdened by them. He has no friends at school and has never had a girlfriend. Over the course of the series, he will begin a relationship with Nancy Wheeler. This will force him to open up and for the first time let someone in. Nancy Wheeler, 16, is an awkward, book-smart teen who is in the early stages of becoming a beautiful woman. But with her newfound looks comes unexpected pain. Her first fling with Steve, a popular teen, leads to heartbreak and humiliation. This experience will drive her unexpectedly into the arms of another, Jonathan. With his help, she will experience love for the first time and find herself. Here's an image from A Nightmare on Elm Street, director Wes Craven from 1984. The Adults. Jim Hop Hopper, early 40s, is the chief of the Montauk Police. He grew up in Montauk but moved to the city immediately post-graduation. He made a happy life there, but it was shattered when a tragic car accident killed his 4-year-old daughter. He retreated to his hometown and now lives a hedonistic lifestyle in a shack by the beach. He drinks heavily, chain smokes, and abuses Tuinal, a potent barbiturate popular at the time, which has since been banned. Hopper took the job of chief not to help others, but because it required very little of him. After all, nothing bad ever happens in Montauk. Or so he thought. This changes when Will goes missing. In order to stop his evil from spreading, Hopper will have no choice but to confront the darkness of his past. Joyce Byers, early 40s, is the single mother of Will and Jonathan. She struggles to raise them while holding down 2 low-paying jobs with long hours. She chain smokes, speaks with a thick Long Island accent, and has blunt manners. Despite all this, she is a loving mother who would go to incredible lengths to protect her boys. Over the course of the show, Joyce's desperation will lead her into an unexpected and rocky relationship with Hopper. Mr. Clark, 35, is the rock star of the local middle school. Charismatic, charming, handsome, and whip-smart, he's the closest thing our series has to Indiana Jones. Mr. Clark will become increasingly essential as the show moves forward, as he will be key to solving the mystery of what has happened in Montauk. He will ultimately help our characters breach the tear in Act 3. Terry Ives, 40, mentioned only passing in the pilot, will play an important role in episodes to come. An antisocial hermit and local movie theater perfectionist with the looks of a serial killer. Balding hair, big oval glasses. I'm going to stop right there. Tim Bundy did not look like that. Okay. Terry is a conspiracy nut and has been investigating Camp Hero for over a decade. Although initially derided by Hopper and others, he will become an unexpected, albeit reluctant, hero in the dark days ahead. He might even make a friend or two along the way. Here we have a picture from Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg, 1975. Franchise potential. Even though Montauk is designed as a standalone 8-hour tale, the story can continue in subsequent installments. The hypothetical sequel will take place in the same town only 10 years later, in the summer of 1990. Our kids will now be young adults with new lives, new problems. Many of them will have moved out of Montauk, spread out across the country for school and work. But the reemergence of horror in Montauk will bring them back to their hometown, where they will have no choice but to join forces again. This will allow us to explore many of the same characters, themes, and horrors from the original series, but with a new ensemble of actors and a fresh time period. And there we are. We read through the entire story Bible for Stranger Things, and you can see, reading through it, how it's laid out, how it's structured, how it's formatted, the information that it gives. And this is sort of what your story Bible project will look like for your semester exam. Okay? So if you have any questions, we will talk about that in our group call coming up next. And other than that, we'll head over to our Google Doc and we'll continue writing and developing our story Bible and our characters goals and arcs over there. Okay? Thanks for joining me and listening to me read this document, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.